Last Sunday, Holy Mother Church celebrated our Lord as our Good Shepherd. It's a beautiful image because a shepherd cares for his sheep. Recently, I heard a talk given by a holy priest. He's with the Fraternity of St. Peter. And he was raised on a sheep farm. And his father was the shepherd. On a given day, there was a pregnant sheep, that was in trouble. She was in distress, and the ewe was panting, and something had to be done immediately. Otherwise, the sheep and her lamb would die. So they wrestled her down, tied her legs to wooden planks, shaved that section, and took a sharp knife and performed what we would understand as a C-section. Cut her, made the incision, and then the farmer or the shepherd gently removed the sheep, sutured her up, and put her in a pen to heal. Now, the sheep is an irrational creature. So you could imagine the fear and the anxiety that she had, being wrestled to the ground and cut with a sharp knife. You know, you and I are rational creatures, and often in the midst of suffering, we can behave like the sheep. Because the sheep did not know that the shepherd had her best interest in mind, and that of her lamb. Oftentimes when we endure suffering, it feels that we could be tempted to think that God has abandoned us, that we're distant from God, that God is not in it. Nothing can be further from the truth. God took on human flesh for the sole purpose of entering into our suffering. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And that way always takes us to Calvary. Now, in Calvary, our Lord did something only God can do. It was from the cross that Jesus took suffering which entered into the world as a result of sin. And from the cross, Jesus took that curse and turned it into a blessing. And you and I, in fact, our Lord's calling us to do the same. How can we do that? We can take our suffering, the pain that we experience in this life, and we can offer it to God as a sacrifice. Now, I could imagine many of you at home or maybe laying in a hospital bed watching this TV Mass. Many of you are enduring great suffering. Be assured that the Lord is with you. In fact, it's our suffering. It's the material from which our Lord's preparing a place for us in heaven. I would encourage you to place yourself in front of a crucifix, if you have access to one. If not, imagine our Lord on the cross. And say this prayer: "O my Jesus, it's for love of thee I offer this suffering as a sacrifice, for the conversion of sinners and in reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart of Mary and to thine own Sacred Heart. If you do this, I promise you that God will fill you with an abundance of his grace, and he will be with you in the suffering. Persevere in that, and you will find joy in the suffering. In fact, there are some families right now I'm praying for. A young girl recently lost her life in a tragic car accident. Another one is in hospice preparing to meet the Lord. She's too young to die. But the Lord has allowed it. So I've offered many things. And when I suffer, I think of them, and I can offer that to them. And there's something beautiful that happens. It transforms it, and suddenly suffering takes on new meaning. So listen very carefully to the words that our Lord has given us today. Do not let your hearts be troubled.